welcome to episode 11 of the Conscious Creators Community. We're nearly at the end of season 1. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that supported us so far and everybody in the show as well. It has been an incredibly inspiring season for me, and I think for all of us and a lot of the guests and the people in the show. So this week we are here to talk about the greater good, and more specifically, what is oneness and co-creation, and how do we affect the collective and our ecosystem? So I'm going to start with a really big question for each of you, and I'll go around the screen as we normally do. So what is the concept of oneness, and how does it relate to our interconnectedness and co-creation as a global community? Here we go. Right, and so Sil, you're first on my screen.
What is the concept of oneness? This is a really cool topic. I would say, Will, you can use a old-fashioned watch or clock as an analogy. When you open that clock up inside, right, you see all those gears working. Now, that's all of us. Yeah. Does it matter if a big gear or small gear? You can take the tiniest, little, most supposedly insignificant gear and remove it. What happens to your watch? It stops working. Yeah. All right. So that's oneness. It's one watch, but it's using difference all together, interacting, collaborating. Yes. And through that collaboration, you get 1 + 1 + 1 equals more. And that's how we get that massive oneness, right? All the differences interacting and collaborating, leveraging off each other. And this gives that magical oneness. It's not about all being the same. That's the point I want to make. Oneness is celebrating difference, not sameness. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sil. And Paul, you're next on my screen.
Pleasure.
Hello. It's interesting. Lots of different religions and traditions talk about this concept of oneness. From a Druid perspective, it's a little bit different. So we see everything connected by this concept of an interconnected web. So imagine a spider's web, that each life upon the thread, each life woven into the thread is just, it's a single thread. And where each of those threads interact is where each of our worlds collide. So we kind of see our reality as individual because it's based on our individual perceptions and understandings and ideas. But collectively, each one of those threads are woven together. So each of our lives become woven together. So, and as Sil said, like we see it the same way. So oneness is not the same as sameness. Like you can still be an individual moving along your thread, but where your thread interacts with someone else's, you get something created. Either you'll have harmony or you will see harmony created. Sometimes we just don't have harmonious connections, but that still serves the greater good in some way, because from that moment we either gain learning or wisdom or insight or understanding, or we see the experience as a test, as a challenge for us to rise above that, or to become cognizant and aware of perhaps where we acted shady or we were in our shadows in that moment. And then each one of those threads, like, it becomes its own spider web in itself, because the concept of, for us, the concept of fate is like a spider's web woven together by the weavers, which are like magical spider-like beings, weaving the threads of our fate together. So whilst each thread is individual, it makes its own unique web. It interconnects with the rest of the web, and it either enhances or it doesn't. Yes.
Thank you, Paul. That's awesome. I love that. And Cher, you're next on my screen.
Goodness, this is a huge question, and I'm going to be honest and say this is foreign language to me. I have not ever really thought about, not on a practical level anyways, oneness. But what I can say is this. To me, it's, I just kind of got writing a few notes. To me, it's being connected to others in a large collective, even though I'm still an individual with my individual opinions, thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, my perspective. And I may or may not vibe with another person or others, but I still affect others by where I'm at that moment.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna leave it there.
Brilliant. Thank you,
Yes.
Cher. I love that. Yeah, really good. Anna, it's you now.
Well, good morning, good evening, everybody everywhere.
Hello.
This concept of oneness is one that I've been experiencing for quite a long time, actually. I experience things very concretely. If I can't feel it in my body, it doesn't really resonate. So I remember the first time I understood the concept of the infinite. I was maybe 11, and it blew my mind. It was actually a little scary. And then later on, when I understood that everything was made of particles and energy, I realized that there's no such thing as separateness, that there's no such thing as actually solidity. And that also blew my mind and made me a little crazy until I could actually understand a little better. So for me, oneness is the concept that there is no, everything is energy and everything is vibrating. And the way you vibrate is how you appear in a solid state. What does that have to do with me? I mean, in the world, in real life, is that even though I am one person, and I am unique, and there is no other manifestation that is my manifestation of myself, I am no different from anybody. So there is, like Paul says, there is a common ground in difference, in diversity. So even though I am a diverse human being, I am one with everything and everybody. There is no separateness. And like Cher says, everything that we do, everything that we think, feel, say, affects everything else around us. It's just as simple as realizing that what my skin is vibrating is connected with the air and the computer and all of you and everything around it. There is no separateness in that. However, we are all unique manifestations of that oneness. I hope that made sense.
That did make a lot of sense. That's brilliant. Thank you, Anna.
No,
Sander.
Yeah, I personally never use the concept of oneness because there's a lot of people having an interpretation of the term oneness that is not what oneness for me is, or how to say it. For me, we are all an individual, like what Anna said, and we have our own unique traits, and we are part of, you might call it an ecosystem, where everything is interconnected and interrelated.
That's ego, not ego.
And we are an individual. We have individual thoughts, etc., etc. And the concept of oneness, yes, we're all individuals, but we are part of a larger environment. And that goes beyond us humans, because I also have interactions with the animals that are around me. And there's also a connection there. It does not stop with being a human being.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so spot on. And thank you, Sander. Gabe, you are next.
I just wanted to mention, Sil. Oh yeah, thanks for muting yourself because we were hearing what you were saying.
Oh, okay. So, hello everybody, welcome back. So oneness, huh? Yeah, I had no idea what oneness was in my life. It was just something that nobody ever talked about, right? And we all go through life feeling lonely sometimes and abandoned and disconnected or dissociated, all this kind of stuff. And then one day, we pop into this oneness concept. And for me, it popped in because, I was an angry person. I was really disturbed about a lot of things. And discovering how to release all of that, I learned heart and brain coherence. And I'm still learning about that because it's such a deep concept. So when we are disconnected from our own life, we're really disconnected from life as a whole, let's say the universe, right? There's no coherence there. So there's no oneness. And to be able to have or feel one as one, not lonely, not abandoned or anything like that, you want to create coherence in your heart. And that's how I discovered it for me. How to close that gap and create that harmony within myself, that now I can actually vibe that and share that with others, because we're all entangled, we're all energy, and if I smile, somebody feels it across the other side of the pond. If I feel sad, somebody next door could feel it. So that's how powerful our human energy is. So if we're going to be vibrating at a high level to feel connected to yourself, that's one of the greatest things that we can discover. And what that leads to is entanglement with everybody else. Right now, I feel one as a whole group here, because we're all one. And we're all part of, like, the metaphors that we heard, right? The spider web or the cogs in a watch. We're all part of a bigger, scheme of life. And regardless if we're all different, we all have the same thing, which is good intentions. And good intentions comes with heart and brain coherence. If you got those two vibrating together, you're always going to be connected, even if you're alone. I've been alone now for I'm going to say a good 4 years, and I don't feel lonely. I don't feel lost. If anything, I feel more encouraged and empowered at a daily basis because of the work that I do. And I get to share with people, not just locally, but across the world. So I'm connected. We're all connected. That's my my view on interconnectedness.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it, Gabe. And you touched on some things that have come up for me over the last week, asking lots of other people about this. So thank you for that. Brenda, you are next.
Hi, I'm Brenda Johnson. I'm an energy healer, and you can find me at torontoshaman.com. My concept of oneness is that we are all part of Creator, whether you call that Creator or God or the consciousness of the universe. We're all part of it, from the Big Bang Theory, all the molecules out there. We're all one, like we said, like Paul said, the spider web. We're all interconnected. So as we said, our vibration connects with others. What we think and feel is projected out, and it's projected onto other people, onto animals, onto places, countries and places, and onto things. There are things in your house probably that have experienced your negativity and anger, and they're all holding that. It's all out there. So you're putting that out there, as we say, across the pond, across everywhere in the whole planet is what you're putting all that stuff out to. And that creates the reality that we live in. And I've mentioned before, like, we're in a soup. So we're in the soup, which Paul taught me about Druid stuff, cauldrons. We're in the cauldron. And what are you putting in the cauldron? Because you're sitting in it with your children and all your loved ones and everyone that you care about, your animals, the plants, you're sitting in it. Are you just dumping more into it, or are you cleaning it out? So the reality we live in, so we can spark or ignite in people their good behavior or their bad behavior, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so too. And thank you. That was a really direct, can't think of the word, succinct word, that's the word I'm looking for, description. So thank you, Jen Stover.
Thank you. This is a really cool concept. I'm glad we're talking about this today.
Yeah, me too.
I can't really add too much more than what's been already said. People really get it in this space here. I could probably say it in just a different language. I see kind of oneness is what we share at a human, physical, and energetic level. That includes our biological, neurochemical, emotional needs. It includes concepts that are like a through line through all of us, like the fact that we all struggle, that we all value life, that we all value family of some sort, that we all want happiness and none of us wants to suffer, right? Those are all commonalities we all share. And so to me, oneness is remembering and working within those commonalities so that it interconnects our individuality, but without denying our individuality.
Wow, I like that. And I think you definitely added some things there. So that was awesome. Anthony.
Hey everyone, I'm Anthony. I'm a holistic peak performance coach. You can find my website, palestine.co.uk, also written down there. My view on oneness, I'll give a spiritual spin and a practical kind of engineering spin. So the spiritual one is kind of what a lot of people have been talking about. It's just what is. Everything that exists, it is, and we can see it as one thing. And when I say we, I mean humans or individuals. As soon as we say we automatically make a separation in order to communicate that we're talking about a part of the oneness. But if we really zoom out and think about everything as a whole, and this is where interconnectedness comes into play, everything that exists is oneness. And whatever divisions you want to make because you want to communicate about things is just parts of that oneness. So the practical side is kind of that communication related note. We can say it just is. We're all one, we all agree on that. And it's just a question of what kind of lens are you looking at. So if you want to look at an individual human, you have your focus is on that human and everything else is not that human. If you want to focus on one country, then everything else is not that country. If you want to focus on Earth, and then everything else is not Earth. So from a practical level, co-creation is dependent on communication because you need to interact with the other parts of the system in order to do practical things like create a better life for yourself. In order to do that, you need to either, find food, make money or something. And these things are concepts that if it weren't for the concepts and for the language, we would struggle in co-creating. So yeah, I mean, it's a big topic to navigate, and I don't want to talk too much in the first instance. So I'll leave it at that. On a spiritual side, we're all one because everything that is can be viewed as one single thing, and everything within it is parts. And from a practical side, we really look at language as the divider, because even the concept of oneness implies that there's the concept of nothingness. And when you have oneness and nothingness, you already have duality. And that takes away from oneness. And that's my point about language. So we're there.
Yeah, I like that point. And yeah, mind blown, as many people are saying on that last note there. Yeah, so the oneness and the nothingness. Yeah. And the nothingness always reminds me of the never ending story. So John Cooper.
Yeah. So thanks for setting this up, and great to see everybody again. And I hope you had a great trip there, Matt. But anyway, it actually brings me back to the kickstart of my entire spiritual growth when I was 11 years old. And I don't have any idea why, but I just, for some reason, touched these fingers together. And when I did that, all of a sudden, the entire universe, I couldn't see anything, I couldn't hear anything, and yet everything was 100% dense but weightless. And there was absolutely no distinction between me and anything else. And then when I studied in India, there's the supreme level of Hinduism is called Advaita. And Advaita literally means not two. So more or less, as Anthony was talking about, as everybody has been in a sense. And so this idea is that there's that everything in the universe is a network of diamonds, and that there is no, the distinctions are all of our own creation. And so we can step outside of the outside of this oneness if we want to you know, if we need to for practical purposes, but it's where it's really our home.
Brilliant. I love that. And thank you for bringing that all in there. Some great information there. Joey, sitting in the sun.
Hi, I'm sitting in the corner so I can avoid the wind. Great to see everybody. Great to have you back. Great to be here. What a freaking amazing cumulative experience, definition of oneness. I can add to that in this way. Oneness from a presence standpoint is sort of the ultimate connection. And it involves a lack of separation, but also like a lack of time. So like what keeps coming into my head, because I agree with everything, and all of those little bits create like my pretty much definition of oneness. But what kept coming to my head as I was listening was this idea that I've had of standing in the river, right? Like in creation, right? A lot of people tend to separate their idea of creation, right? Like I'm creating something, so that's all I'm doing is creating. Or say you're in the act of receiving something, right? Then you're like, in this moment, I'm receiving. In this moment, I'm creating, right? In this moment, I'm experiencing. In this moment, I'm letting go. And oneness for me, the real feeling or experience of it was the moment that I realized I was doing all of that every moment, right? That there wasn't these little moments where I was doing one or the other. And so I have this like little visual in my head of like what this feeling of oneness feels like as a creator. And that would be standing in a river, watching all the things you've previously thought of, right? Float down and be like, oh my goodness, that's what it looks like as the creation, right? Letting it flow away, right? Actively knowing you're still creating more stuff that's going to keep flowing down the river, right? But then having this aha moment that you are also the river, right? And I was like, whoa, like, because at first it was just like this one part, and then one day I was just standing there going, okay, now actively imagine that your stuff you're creating is flowing down this river, and you're seeing it come to fruition, you're experiencing it, it's giving you wisdom, and then it's floating away. And then I was like, and you're also the river, right? So oneness for me is the ultimate connection, in which not only is there not separation between me and other dense realities, as in people or nature or animals or, objects, but there's also not this separation of time of past and future. And there's also not this separation of creation, destruction, receiving, and giving, right? Everything is all at once. Oneness is all at once, and feeling it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm feeling that. I love that description. And I really, yeah, really important that we are doing all those things at the same time, even if we only focused on one. I couldn't agree more. Now, I think, Jennifer?
Thank you, and welcome back, Matt. So good to
Thank
see
you.
you again. I missed you
So
when
good
you
to
were
see you all.
gone.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
I think that the concept of oneness to me can be described like this. I think that the entire existence, not just our world, our planet, everything that exists is both a driven and driving gear in the same large and very complicated machine. And the machine does many things depending upon which way the gears are moving and how well they're working together. So the idea of oneness, I agree with what everyone said. A few people touched on how oneness doesn't mean all being the same, because if all the gears are just moving in the same direction, it wouldn't work. Everything has to move its own way. And that's just kind of how I see the world, like down to the smallest things, you know, even plants and everything. Look at the way everything interacts with each other in nature. You know, that symbiotic relationship, how we breathe out what the plant breathes in and vice versa. Like everything here is keeping the machine going. And by making sure that our gear is properly greased and working the way that it needs to, will ensure that the machine ultimately does better. The oneness, the whole thing, all of everything in existence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so, indeed. Now, I think that was everyone because my screen's been jumping around a little bit. Just give me a wave if I didn't get you. I think I've got you all. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to add mine here. So having read about the Hermetic principles, really, they believe that we are all part of the all, which could be the universe. It could be more than the universe is as far as we are. And ultimately, yeah, that's where we are. We're in that. It created us. We've all been formed, whether you talk about all the animals or all the people. And so we are all part of one thing. So that's where oneness for me is that we're all part of something. We're all, like you say, a cog, a working part of something bigger than ourselves. And it ultimately is almost like a giant multi-cell living organism. And so, you know, why when bits of it don't work, then it doesn't work correctly. So hopefully we're all going to get those bits to work so we can co-create better things together in the future. And so let's move on to another question, because there's some really interesting things here. So excuse me for a second. So many amazing comments there from everyone. So how can we shift our mindset from individualism to collective consciousness and harness our shared energy and resources for the greater good? Oh, John, straight in there. I'll put the question in the comments for everyone. Oh, can't hear you, John. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, brilliant.
Great. Yeah, it relates to something, a principle that I've been working on just for the past week. And, you know, in despair at how much when we talk about developing ourselves and working with other people, it still comes down to a kind of an isolated individualism. And so I realized that everything that's great is done with what I call co-motivation. And that is where our purposes overlap. And this is something that we can actually create. So when we are working beside somebody on the same project, there'll obviously be some distinctions and differences. But what's more important is that we can find the things that we both want, even if explained in slightly different ways, that will bring us together in order to work together and achieve something where one person will offer something that the other person isn't aware of, and vice versa. So I think we can actually create this oneness even on a very small level of one action between two people, or we can do it within, you know, an entire culture or an entire time. And I think it's one thing that people are talking about a lot now, this great awakening, is breaking down the differentiations and the distinctions and the barriers that we been kind of taught to have. So I think that oneness from every moment we can create, and this co-creation we can develop with every moment if we just accept, that's where we need to be.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for sharing that, John. Gabe?
Yeah. So yeah, I like this question, because how do we shift our mindset? And this is something that I work with on a daily basis, but I work on stress, chronic stress, and it's just a common thing, that we've learned to experience and live with, stress. So in order to change a mindset or shift it, it has to be done energetically, because we are energetic beings. And if we have a thought that's energetic, if we have a feeling that's energetic, and the way we act churns up some kind of energy, kinetic energy, whether we're physically active or not. So we're 100% energy. To shift that mindset, we have to have heart and brain coherence. And I say this a lot because I've experienced this, many people have. When we have, when we're off balance, when there's no harmony between our heart and our brain, we have a fixed mindset. We have a devastating mindset. We're basically creating down spiraling events in our lives and experiences, and we attract that. So you want to be able to shift energetically, thinking about things that are possible, things that are unknown, those things that make you feel uncomfortable, but in a good way. It's a challenge because you're moving forward. And when we share this with ourselves, we are literally exposing now this energetic transmission to everything that's around us. And we can affect anybody. There's a tapping technique that I like to work with called EFT proxy protocol. And it's a tapping algorithm that I get to work with somebody at a long distance, the other side of the world. And even though we're not next to each other, 1,000 miles away, energetically, I can affect the person's, heart and their consciousness or their brain, and bring them into coherence so that they can actually start to harness that energy that's been lacking. Once you start to raise that energy, all your other resources, internal resources, they start to activate. And it's just an amazing experience to be able to be in coherence and harmony, to be able to shift that mindset, and become just better. Doing so lowers your brain waves. If you can get to an alpha brain wave, you're going to start to become more creative. You're going to start to see things clearly. You actually breathe a lot better because of it. So I'm all about heart and brain coherence and tapping to get those energies flowing, the positive energy flowing, because the heart needs that. And the heart is really the brains of the operation. The heart signals the brain that tells it what to do. And it's really a good way to go, get into coherence and get that energy flowing in a positive state. And you'll see how you not only affect yourself, but you affect everybody around you.
Love it. Yeah. Powerful stuff, Gabe. Thank you. Anna, you are next.
This is an interesting question for me because I've spent most of my life trying to define who I am separate from those around me, especially those who raised me, who were influencing me, who were teaching me, who were, trying to mold me into a human being from their own perspective. So most people have to go through an individuation process so they understand who they are in relation to everything else. And that's separation. Now, there comes a time when you realize you can't just be separate, that you're not, you're not a separate person. You have to live in communion, in community. And Also, there's a part of you, there's a moment when you realize that you are not just one thing, that you are a multiplicity of things. You are the many roles that you play in the world. So that concept of me, of being a separate person, then starts becoming a little fuzzy. So what is this person? What is this me that I am? And what does it mean to be me in the context of many? I like to think of it as, so as an artist, this is an important concept because as an artist, you want to understand how you are an artist, different from all the other artists that came before you and are living in your time. So you practice your craft until you find your own style, your own way of being, your own way of expressing yourself. And then when you are making a piece of artwork, you have to understand that to make it make sense, you have to work with different parts and different things in it. What are you picturing? How are you picturing it? How are you putting into work? How does this line against this line make sense? How does this color next to this color add to the whole composition? So you have to figure out how to make the whole picture harmonious so that it speaks of something and relates to something. And I was just recently in an art event that was called Slow Art, where we had to sit with a particular work for more than 10 minutes and see what it is, what it says, and then we discussed it. And what I found out is that artwork does not speak to you unless it connects to something that speaks to anybody. And of course, it's subjective. What it says to me, it says a different thing to somebody else. But a piece of artwork has to connect in some way. It has to have a harmonious message that everybody can connect to, either positively or negatively. It doesn't matter. It has to connect in some way. So this concept of individuation has to also include a concept of diversity, of yes, diversity. You're not just one, you are many. So how does that help us connect for the greater good? You have to understand that your individuality is part of a collective, and you being yourself completely and fully adds to the whole thing. So your being a red paint has to connect with the green paint next to you and vibrate and make something harmonious. I don't know if I'm making sense. Mm-hmm. So it's about understanding that you is also a we.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say. I don't know.
That's awesome. No, it made sense, and it reminded me of what Paul was saying about the threads, because one of the things that came to me about all the threads in a tapestry is they're all different colors, and they have to work together to make the actual tapestry. So, although he didn't say that, that was what came to me. Cher, you're next.
I am absolutely loving hearing everybody give their different perspectives, because like I left in the comments there, it feels like the way I'm hearing everybody speak, it sounds like that we're just bitty, bitty pieces of a giant cell. I'm imagining in my mind an amoeba floating somewhere out there in space. So kind of weird there. All right, individualism. For me, my experience, this is coming from my experience. I didn't know what oneness was, honestly, until today. However, I knew what awareness was, and I knew what attunement was. I knew about support. I knew about individualism and about the ego and how it affects us, how our backgrounds affect us, how our stories do. So what I've been thinking about as I've been hearing people listen is I had to start with awareness. I knew I had to. I mean, that's where I started, with learning self-awareness and then getting into self-discovery. And then once I started learning more about myself, I started seeing how I am so connected to everything around me. Not one thing that I do does not have an effect on somebody else. It all does. Every thought, every feeling, every belief, every action, every movement I make puts something out there somewhere, whether it's positive or negative. My intent is to make it all positive, although I don't always succeed. And when I don't, I'm let known by the universe that, hey, you know, you got to clean it up a little bit, sister. So I find myself now to be in this state of, I guess, just awareness, of connected awareness. I pay attention to my mind, body, and spirit connection, because when I'm disconnected from myself, I am completely disconnected from everything else. And then my house is in chaos. And when there's chaos, things just go south. Everything just kind of falls apart. You feel completely disconnected. So what I've been learning recently, let me wrap this up, is to be in a state of receiving as much as possible. To be so aware, so attuned, so mindful that as much as I can, I'm being deliberate in support of myself, in support of others, in support of this collective, doing my part, the part that I was assigned, and then being excited about the little aha moments that I get when I get a message that you're doing it right, because it feels right. Because then I feel supported. When I feel supported and I'm putting out good vibes, and I know others do too. So don't care if it made sense or not. I just know it felt right to say it all. So, there you are.
It was great. No, it was really great. And again, like based on some of the feedback I got this week, you're really on the ball there with what most people feel is the answer to this. So Brenda, you're next.
Yeah, so how can we shift our mindset from individualism to collective consciousness? I feel if we truly believe that that we affect other people and they mirror things back to us, which is what we learn in shamanism. Whatever you put out there, someone will come to mirror it back. So you could see, Brenda, this is what you need to work on, and they'll mirror it back to us. So the more you work on yourself, the better it is going to be. But they're going to mirror back their thoughts and emotions. And no one would want to push or entice their family, friends, strangers into retaliating against us. So we don't want to put negativity out there knowing that other people are going to feel it, put their defenses up, and then give the same thing back to us. So if we could all create, if we all wanted to create a joyful life full of abundance, all we have to do is do our own work, healing our pains and our wounds, and lost my thought here, and create this joyful life for ourselves, knowing that there's abundance out there for all. If there's an abundance mentality and you put that out there, then there will be abundance at all. And right now what we have is a fear and scarcity mentality, and that fear that there's not enough, the scarcity that I have to have mine, I have to, egoic thing, I have to collect everything, I have to hoard everything, I have to get it, I have to get all the money. That is an egoic mentality that people have today. And I guess it's making people feel greedy, and it's telling the universe that we are scarcity and we don't have abundance. So I think if we all try to believe that there's enough joy, love, peace, abundance out there, it will just snowball to everyone. And again, with awareness, once the more and more people are consciously aware, we can create this beautiful life. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I love that. And I think, like, going back to what I was saying about the all, why would the all starve itself? Why would something necessarily, it's all there for us. It's just our beliefs or our mindset that's holding us back. Anthony. Oh, you're muted. So, oh yeah, good check.
Yeah. Shifting our mindset from individualism to collective consciousness. As with many questions, I think this is it depends on whether we're talking about one single individual human being, or whether as a collective or as a society, we want to shift from individualism to collective consciousness. And I think one answer that applies for both is realizing that so far we can only live and enjoy this life on Earth with limited, there are limited resources, and all beings are sharing them. And it's one of the, we can only transform things, matter and energy, but we're not able to create things from scratch, right? You can't create things like trees and oxygen from space. We're talking, so from that standpoint, it's worth thinking about our projections as society and our standards of living. What does it mean to live in peace and harmony? And all of the values that revolve around using and interacting with the resources of your environment. But from specifically on an individual level, you can consciously realize that in the same way that any subsystem of the human being, like a heart, lungs, and any cell, are just individual pieces that we've named that are part of the human, we can expand that to everything else. And we can realize also that every single thing we do, as was previously mentioned, has an effect on others. If I do that, there's some surprise that happens. Even though I knew I was going to do it, I'm not affected and my environment isn't much affected. But the people who are on the receiving end of that, their states are altered because of a thing that I did. And so realizing that there's a whole new-ish field of science called interpersonal neurobiology, which is all about our interconnectedness. And so if there's any interest in that, I recommend checking it out. But yeah, it's a big question, shifting from individualism to collective consciousness, because it also very much depends on an individual situation. And what I mean by that is, if a part is going to die, then it's not really going to sacrifice itself in favor of the others. It's going to try to survive. And in the same way, if you're struggling in your life to provide for basic things for yourself, say food, water, shelter, those basic things of survival, then it's going to be really hard to shift away from individualism and thinking about me, I want to survive, in favor of the collective. So there's a certain, I think there's a certain sense of safety and assuredness in the future that you have to have in order to harness the shared energy towards a greater good. And the greater good is hopefully a way that you see as a sustainable way of sharing all that is this oneness, all of this energy and this matter that we interact with on a day-to-day basis in a way that is at peace and in line with your values. Big complicated answer. I hope I didn't take up too much space there.
All good. No, it was great. Thank you, Anthony. Sil.
Brilliant. How can we shift our mindset from individualism to collective consciousness and harness our shared energy and resources for the greater good? It's a very powerful question. And for me, this is via attunement. Now, I use this analogy of the clock or the watch with gears, but those are very static. To illustrate attunement, that's to have a visualization, very useful. So to illustrate this, imagine we are all connected via elastic bands. I've got all these elastic bands that go out to each and every one of you. Now, if we were to engage in some project, right? Obviously, if somebody's moving out in one direction and really far away from the collective, then they're going to start pulling on everybody else. Now, obviously, one person pulling against everybody is going to have to pull quite hard. If they really determined and they've got a lot of energy, well, maybe they can succeed in pulling everybody. Or if they have something that they're sharing that we say, wow, I like what you're doing. Okay, well, now I don't have to be pulled. I'm now coming along with you and I start pushing. So these are very powerful elastic bands. They have push and pull to them. And also they can grow and expand, and depending on how you emphasize things and your interests, your passions, all of this connects us. And when we realize this and you say, wow, if I'm not in attunement with the world around me, I'm pulling on everything and I'm forcing everything to kind of either push me or pull me. I'm being an obstructionist when I don't even realize I'm being this way. So when I see that, if I work in attunement, I can use my energy more efficiently, more effectively. All comes down to your energy management. And this, the old saying is, oh, go with the flow. That's what you're talking about. Yeah, but I don't like that expression. Why? Because go with the flow sort of as this tumbleweed type of an idea behind it, that you just don't make any effort whatsoever. But anybody who's done any kayaking will know that if you just go with the flow, which with this idea of not doing anything, you just don't paddle at all and you just sit there in the river. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to wash up on the first bend in the river, right? In order to actually go with the flow, you have to make that bit of energy to stay within that main current. And that is attunement. You've got to pay attention to where the flow is going. If there's a bend in the river, oh, there's a waterfall. Well, I have to get out of the flow now and walk around the bend and past the waterfall or whatever, right? Or go down the rapids. So you have to pay attention in order to stay in the flow. And that's attunement, and paying attention to those bonds, that elasticity, that connectivity, to realize that if I learn to collaborate and work in harmony, in attunement, then my energies get used to maximum effect. And me as an individual, I get more by making sure that everybody else also gets more. It all works together. This is how we can surpass this idea of individualism and get into a collective consciousness by understanding this interconnectivity. Yes?
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you, Sil. And Jen Stover.
Okay. Am I on? Yeah.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Anthony, totally relate with what you said. I also took that class on the neurobiology of we. I highly recommend it if you guys are interested in that. And a concept, let me see if I can, I think either Gabe or John hit on this a little bit, but that's what cued my thought. Another way to consider shifting our mindset from individualism to more collective is to expand our motivators beyond the current ones we have of like success, achievement, and power. right? I mean, all our major institutions, education, healthcare, even science, right? That's pretty much driven by those motivators in a sense, a consumptive kind of motivator. And I believe that if we could shift our motivation to include or expand it to include ones that are more socially governed, like affiliation, care, compassion, all of which can be cultivated, just like any other metacognitive type thing that you can train in your brain. You can actually train yourself to become more compassionate. And research over the last 20 years has shown dramatically that these social motivators are what have a critical influence on our well-being, right, and our health. So that's one thing I would offer to consider, is that we could kind of start to train ourselves to look beyond just those obvious motivations that we all grew up learning, and to think about shifting to or training ourselves to have a more compassionate outlook. And I'm not just saying compassion is like a feeling or an emotional state, but I'm talking about like an attitude and a way of life, almost like a through line of how you serve. And if that becomes an additional driver, I mean, those other drivers have their place, you know, at some areas, but if we can add or train ourselves to have an additional driver for what we do, I think that is also part of what can shift us to a more collective attitude.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Really, really great point there, Jen. Sander.
Had to find the unmute button. How can we shift our mindset from individualism to collective consciousness? For me, it starts with know thyself, the phrase know thyself. Get to know who you are. Start building a relationship with yourself. But be interested in what makes you tick and who you are. And then start seeing the relationships within yourself. And from seeing the relationships within yourself, you start seeing the relationships that you have with the world around you. Self-knowledge is the most important key, I think, or I believe, to be shifting one's mindset. Because you might have the intention to do something, but if you do something for the greater good, but if you haven't taken care of yourself first, then it will be harder to make the step and do it for the collective.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, do the inner work, know yourself. Absolutely, and then you realize how connected you really are. Joey.
Oh, these questions, Matt. No. Shifting mindset from individualization to collective to harness the energy. I think that piggybacking off of what Jen just said, my first response was practice, right? Like, what can we do? Practice. And how do we practice collective, right? So I think a really simple and easy way to train oneself in order to be less about the individual and more about community is to tithe, right? Tithing is such an easy practice. So if you choose something to give to of everything that you create, right? So if you create 100 of one thing, be it dollars, be it whatever, right? If you commit to giving a percentage of that thing away, right? That's a really great easy, simple practice. And you can pick whatever number you want, 1%, 2%, 10%, an hour of your day, 1 week out of the month, right? You pick something of an amount value and you practice giving it away, right? So this way, then you gain experience for mindset purposes, right? Your mindset is based on experience, but then you gain experiential data of what that feels like, of seeing how that assists community or assists the world. And you actually begin to train yourself to think outside of yourself, right? By actually doing something that is outside of yourself, that benefits maybe yourself in a heartfelt way, but really that benefits something other than yourself, you know, at the same time or more than yourself, right? So my first idea was how you shift your mindset to be for the greater good is by implementing a practice of doing something benevolent for something outside of yourself on a daily basis. The second thing that popped into my mind was, first, obviously awareness, knowing who you are, right? You have to, in order to shift from an individual to a collective, you have to know who you are as an individual, right? So it's like you cannot go from individual to collective if you've never arrived at individual, right? Which is a process of letting go of conditioning and labels and roles and you know, past experiential clutter and stuff like that. So if we're going to go from individual to consciousness, and we're going to see that as a stepping point towards collective consciousness, then first and foremost, it would be a practice of learning who you are, which a lot of people have said. But if you go to the end of the sentence, greater good, there also needs to be a contemplation of what greater good means. And when you start stripping the roles of that too, like at some people would think, like in a religious dogma type sense, making the world more like your religion would be making greater good, right? But if we simplify to magnify, so we just think about, if you look at every single thing you come in contact with and find common denominators, that if you put this out into the world, it would enhance most or not all things, right? And when you do that, you come up with things like expansion, fluidity, harmony, right? That is something that no matter who you give that to, it's going to create, it's going to continue this idea of life force, right? It's not going to limit or define or diminish. So the second thing would be to train your mind to expand its own definition of what great is, right? And how you would do that is by looking at everything you come in contact with and see, what could I add to this that would enhance the life force of it? And when you do that enough, you find these common denominators that if you add this out into the world, it generally is for the greater good. You know, it's not for a greater representation of what we value. It's for a greater growth or a greater fluidity or a greater harmony. So those are the things that were coming to my mind.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerry. And Paul.
So everyone, amazing. And there's so many little bits and I'm like, I was going to say that, but it's cool someone said it. I want to add to it though. So as a practitioner of magic, of witchcraft, when we, and it's going to sound quite an odd analogy, but stay with me. When we practice, we enter into a relationship with the other aspects of that spell, that working whenever we're doing. So everything from the tools that we work with, to the spirits, to the plants perhaps we're burning, or the oils that we're using, each one we enter into a shared relationship. They're lending a part of their power, I'm lending a part of mine, and so whatever that act is. So the way we see our deities, they're like partners. They're not like something we bow down to. They're our co-creators. We get a group of people doing that together, like for a shared ritual or a ceremony. The energy that one person can build within that is one thing. the combined energies of all of those people coming together to share within that same goal, it magnifies that experience. If you get like 2 or 3 of your friends, like the energy you'll generate perhaps from unified dancing or chanting will build the energy. You get 10 or more people drumming alongside with you, you build that energy up even further. Eventually that energy builds to a certain state, and then it's released, the spell's done, whatever it is, and everyone goes back to their lives, and off they go to do their thing. I think the idea that we can shift ourselves from individualism to collective consciousness, I don't think this is possible. I think everyone makes up an individual whole of that collective. As I just said, like each people working within that ceremony, like 20 of them, 30, or however many it was, have all lended their energy to whatever the collective unified goal is, but then they've all gone off and done their own thing. You know, Barry's gone off down the pub, he's had a few beers, the other guy's gone for fish and chips, someone's gone home to look after their kids. At the end of the day, we can work on a singular goal or a collective grouping of goals towards a singular aim, but we still have to understand that we are still the individual part of that. And I said it on your post the other day, like one can't experience the mystical without the self, because it's the self that experiences the mystical. The same way in the collective consciousness, like everyone working together as a collective, it might be felt as a collective, but it's the individual that feels it. You can't completely take the self totally out of it. And I would also add, like I could go out right now and do charity work for the next 10 hours and feed 100 families, and I would feel so elated and it would be amazing. But if I've got to come home to empty cupboards because I've got no food in there, that becomes a challenge. And that's not always about survival mode. That's just about, at some point, in order for us to add something to everyone else's lives, perhaps we have to take some time out of ours. And it's interesting. So people would say that that's a sacrifice. In the old language, in the Celtic language, the word sacrifice actually meant sacred offering. So effectively, we're giving a sacred offering in order to a combined collective. But we still need something for ourselves. So we can never take that out of it. And until we're able to live on just breathing pure air and chi energy, then we'll have to continue, you know, a little bit of looking after the self and feeding the self. So that was kind of what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Awesome. And Jen, sorry.
Thank you, Matt. So as far as shifting our mindset from individualism to collective consciousness, I think the word that comes to mind for me is empathy. You know, it's through the act of experiencing empathy and empathizing with everyone around you, everything around you, the planet, the environment, all of that. And because I agree with what Paul says, that like we have our individual needs, right? Like it's never going to happen that we're not going to be individuals and we're going to be all about the collective. However, a good question that I like to ask myself sometimes is, how can I get the most out of this experience at the expense of no one else? You know, make sure that, number one, we're not messing anything up, we're not doing any harm. But then I took the question to another level and I changed it. And I said, what is the most I can receive from this while simultaneously giving the same amount? You know what I mean? And I think if we all as individuals do that, that is what will feed the greater good, and that is how we harness our shared energy and our resources, is, you know, by each one of us as individuals doing our best.
Love it. Wow, powerful. And I love that question. I love the second version of the question. Really powerful. Anna, next.
This is such a huge question. I like to think that we as humans have a unique gift. Everything lives in harmony. You look at nature, you look at animals, they don't have to think much. They don't have to think at all to make it work. They are already tapped into the harmonics of life. What's interesting about humans is that we have one extra thing than other living things do. And that is our power and also our worst detriment. And that is the power of choice. We are co-creators with the creator. Whatever force created the universe and everything in it, we are able to add to it or detract from it by our choices. We are like gods without control, without self-control. We come into this world, we have this incredible power, but we don't know how to use it. So our mission first in life is to figure out how to use it, how to control our power. And that comes with maturity. That comes with dealing with how to integrate all the traumas that are part of life. You know, coming into life is a traumatic event. Being born is a traumatic event. And everything else that happens in life, you know, the parents we are born into, the place we grow up in, the time in history where we are in existence, all of that brings challenges to our life, to who we are. Now, what most people want, what most people need are basically three things. We want freedom to be ourselves. We want to have a purpose for being, and we want to be connected. Human beings, like everything else in nature, cannot survive without being connected. So how do we do this? How do we become individuals? How do we harness our godliness power? And how do we put it to work in life? And how do we connect it basically in love? That, I don't know who said it. I think it was Joanne. Practice. It's a practice. You practice being that which you want to be. And you can practice being an asshole, or you can practice being a kind person, a compassionate person. So it's up to you. It's all a choice. And the choices you make either connect you to the whole and make your being in this world useful, or disconnect you. And yeah, and you know, everything goes to SHIT. So yeah, it's all about understanding that you have so much power, and how you use that power and for what is the secret. It's all a choice. It's up to you. It's up to each one of us to either be a use, because it's like this. So let's pretend we're painters, we're artists, because I can't help it. I'm an artist, so I have to encase everything in terms of creativity. We are creators, and art is the ultimate creative process because it makes things concrete in the world. So as a painter, you paint what you see. You paint the trees, you paint people, you paint abstract visions, whatever. You paint what you see. Now it's up to you to figure out what it is you want to see. What do you want to see? Do you want to see a world in disharmony and in pain? Or do you want to see a world in harmony and in love? So the choices you make as a painter of your life depend on what you want to see. So see what you want to paint, so you can paint what you want to see. Basically, that's all it is.
Nice. Thank you, Anna. Really good. John, I had to mute you, sorry, because there was some noise, so you might need to unmute again.
Right, sorry. Yeah, so we're all actually, each one of us is a community in ourselves. And so the first thing that we need to do is to learn how to, as I call it, align all of these elements. And unfortunately, society fragments us, and then it prioritizes the conscious, logical, verbal mind, if we allow it to. So if we start by aligning all of our minds, and I would say that our entire bodies and even beyond our bodies are actually a mind, that the mind doesn't happen in our head only, for sure. And so if we do that, then it allows us to also connect with that aspect of other people, like empathy is definitely one quality, or ideas, or actions, when there's something so satisfying about actually physically working next to each other all day and working on the same thing. So there's so many aspects of it to align ourselves and then to align with other people. And this is part of the practice, and it's definitely something that we can work on by being more aware of our connections and less aware of our distinctions.
Nice. Thank you, John. Sil?
I want to get practical a little bit. If we think of this, how we can be more in terms of community and connectiveness, and we focus on this in a very detailed, practical, very basic way, we can look at leveraged self-interest or enlightened self-interest, or leveraging your ego. Or you can also think of it, as I prefer to, as leveraging moreness. Now, how does it work in a very practical way? Well, let's look at lions and how they survive. Everybody wants to be a lion. Well, not me, thank you very much. But when we look at lions, we say, well, how do they actually go about doing what they do? Well, okay, they go and they have to find something and they have to hunt it and bring it down. What happens then? So first of all, if you actually watch them, they do have some collaboration, not all that much. It's like, okay, dude, you're the one who wants to jump on and bite, and okay, well, go ahead, fine, I'll just watch you do it. Fine, okay, you brought it down. Once they've actually succeeded in killing something to eat, what do they do then? They then fight over the carcass. Seriously? You want to just go and do another one, and you'll have plenty to eat. Yeah. Well, you take the wild dogs now, the most successful hunters in Africa. They are the most successful because they know how to collaborate. And what they do is they also share. They are able to say, hey, we need to give everybody a piece of the pie, and everybody contributes all together. We're not fighting each other in a competition for this, right? So the dogs have understood that me as an individual, I can get more by working together with everybody. The lions haven't figured this out yet. And the lions actually struggle. They're not all that successful, by the way. Many times they're tribes of lions or prides of lions that go extinct. They get wiped out, right? Because they haven't figured this out yet, what the dogs have. They haven't realized that if I want to get more for me, I need to work together with everybody and think of the whole as benefiting me. Like, for instance, okay, we kill one zebra and it's not enough to feed the whole pride. Well, let's kill another one. Yeah, no, they never think that. They never ever do this. Just the alpha guy. Well, I get to eat first and everything, and never mind, to hell with the rest of you. But it's a short-sighted mindset. There's no awareness of this idea of greater good and of collaboration, getting each individual more. So if we could leverage the greed and say, hey, lion, are you really greedy? You want more? Well, fine, let's get you more. Let's get you more than you want to have, that you can get on your own. You can get more by working together with others. This is the magic of collaboration. You get that moreness. And I want to touch on something that Roy asked. He said, in a football stadium, you go to a match or any big match, you get that community vibe, that extra emphasis, that extra energy that happens. Why? It happens because of emphasis. When your brain gets emphasized in something, you're paying attention, the nodes and the connectivities in your brain, they literally expand and literally connect more. So when you are in a collaboration, your brain gets fired up and it functions in a way that it doesn't normally function. So you get this benefit that you don't normally get. You get enhanced, in other words, via this connectivity through emphasis, right? And when it is pertinent and relevant to you, it's even more so. And that's the magic of collaboration. It makes you internally, actually, literally makes you more able, more connected, more attentive, more understanding, etc., etc. There's so much power that comes from this, and all comes from when we get down to our basic root self, because it's still there. We need to update that primitive self that's me, and say, let's get to an enlightened me ego. If you really want to get the most, learn to work together with everything. In other words, greater good. Make the world a better place. Why? Because it's going to benefit you. Yeah.
Powerful, and thank you for seeing that. I didn't see that comment, so do my best with the comments, everybody. So hopefully I've not missed anyone out there. Got to see Sil's been responding for me. So Joey, Russ, sorry.
I wanted to add to the consciousness aspect and the harnessing energy. So if you think of it as just information, right? Like individuality is, when we're thinking of an individual as an individual, we're thinking based only on our experiences, like our particular individual experiences, feelings, connections, right? And so the act of moving from a limited or sort of finite type consciousness, right, which you're only going to be able to produce finite creations really from, unless you connect into something bigger, say collective consciousness. Now, collective consciousness would be all of our individual consciousnesses, right? It's sort of like a bigger pot, right? And so it's like now we can tap into this collective consciousness and we can get ideas and possibilities, right? So a crucial part is really being open to the mystery, open to what we don't know, right? So engaging and pushing your comfort zone and putting yourself in places where you maybe know the least, or where you're open to possibility and curiosity. So curiosity is like a really big practical thing that you can use to go from individual to being able to tap into the collective consciousness, right? And then past that, the grand unconsciousness, like all possibility, outside of even human realm of understanding, in the oneness, right? Bring it all back to the oneness. But how this is practical, how you can take this down from like theory into practice is challenge, curiosity and challenge, right? So if you stay in a state of curiosity and you cultivate a state of curiosity and you allow yourself to be challenged, then you will move from this one state of consciousness, this limited experiential state, into a more, you'll be able to open up your intuition, open up these possibilities. And when you open up possibility, you allow this collective consciousness or this grand unconsciousness in. And the byproduct of that is more energy, because literally it's like you are a very finite vessel, right? And that's all that you have access to in this one way. And then when you open up to this bigger cauldron or pot or soup or whatever, you just have access to so much more, and everything is energy. So just the mere fact of shifting and opening and being curious, like even just asking the question, what is collective consciousness? You've already increased the amount of energy that you can actually kind of create with and add to the collective, right? But if you think about possibility as like little either building blocks or maybe pieces of firewood, right? As an individual limited to only your experiential building blocks, you only have that much, you can only make that big of a fire, right? And once you tap into the collective, you have that many more pieces to build from, that many more, pieces of wood to light on fire. So I would say the harnessing of energy is a byproduct of expanding your consciousness. And how you expand your consciousness is you just choose to, right? So you choose to take that journey. So everything always comes down to choice. But anyway, those are the things. Those are the things.
Brilliant. And I think like even this show is a good example of how that works, because we're bringing back together so many consciousnesses and so many different experiences, and each of us, as well as the guests, always benefits, I believe, from every show we host. And so we hope you benefit as much as we do, because we love these conversations, and we want them to benefit you as much as they benefit us. So Anna.
So I wanted to pick up on something I think Sil brought up, which is this concept of gift. Most humans think of interaction with everything else, with others and the world, as a transaction, meaning if this, then that. If I do this, then you do that. If I give you something, or I have a product, then you give me something. But that's not how really it works. It's not ever a transaction. It's a gifting, meaning when you come into this world, you come as a gift to the world. You come as a brand new manifestation of whatever it is life is about. So our job in life is to understand that we are a gift. And what that means is, are we a gift that wants to be received or not? If a gift can't be received, then it's not a gift anymore. It's an imposition. So our job is to understand what our gift is. How are we a gift? How is it that we manifest the life force in the world, and how does it benefit the world? So that has to do with you understanding yourself, practicing being completely yourself, authentic. What does that mean, authentic? It means that you don't have to explain. You don't have to have caveats. This is who I am if you understand this. No, you are as you are without having to have an explanation for being. And that is what I think a lot of people in our community call our higher self. Who we are is that higher self, that gift that we came into this world with. And once you figure that out, once you harness it, once you practice it, then you can offer it. You can offer it. And that's what we're supposed to do. It's really that simple. And at the same time, really difficult, because there's so many other forces around us, so many influences. We worry about, is there enough food? Is there enough air? Is there enough water? Yes, if we don't squander it. Yes, if we share it. Yes, if we care for it. Sil mentioned lions. I have a hard time thinking about natural things, especially animals, in terms of human morality. Nature has no morality. Nature is nature. Things happen, and other things happen in consequence of those things. And somehow everything just works out. So if a lion eats too many antelope and doesn't share, then there's going to be a little bit of famine until, things equalize a little bit. What's messing up the lion's ecosystem is not the lion. The lion works perfectly with the ecosystem it lives in. It's us, humans, interfering with natural processes. And that's because we are disconnected from our own natural process, our own authentic manifestation in the world. So yeah, it's about understanding that you're a gift. Be a gift to the world. Don't take, give. And what happens when you give, it comes back to you 10 times more. That's another law of nature. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So whatever you put out comes back to you. And because everything that we do has exponential consequences, if we put out a gold coin to the world and it benefits someone, that someone is going to gift maybe 2 coins. And then what happens is there's like a reverberating effect, and it always comes back to you. And before you know, that gold coin turned into 10,000 gold coins. It's all a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you brought up so many things for me there. I think when I learned to give unconditionally, which took understanding an abundance mindset and really embracing the fact that I'm part of a benevolent universe, it changed my life fully. And then the really crucial thing for me, because you're talking about transactional, is that when I stopped feeling like I had to give back to the people who gave to me, yeah, and instead of giving back to them because they gave to me unconditionally, I give back to someone else and I pass that gift on. That really, really changed my life. So Sil, you wanted to add something?
Yes, best use of energy. That's what it always comes down to. How can we use our energy to best effect? Are we going to just spend it or squander it, even worse, or are we going to invest it? And this is also to say, how can I be a bit more strategic? And if you really think about this, if I want to get the best for me as an individual, if I make sure my environment is taken care of in the greater world, this is cool. Now I'm investing in the world in order to benefit me. And I don't necessarily have to see a direct relationship to it, right? So when I share, I'm putting things out there that benefit everything or potentially get to benefit. And of course, this not only benefits me, but benefits everybody. So this longer term perspective, having this overview perspective, this helps tremendously. And when I come away from this mindset of just me, which is, that was my analogy, Anna, with a lion. It's not very effective in how it uses its energy. Yes, it kind of works, but it can be more effective. If we think of people and why we are so successful as a species, it is precisely because we've learned to work together. We've learned to be strategic. Whereas, this is many in like the lions, they're not particularly strategic. They could be, you could train lions to actually be more effective. But we've learned this, and we've learned and understood that when we collaborate, this makes everything better. And this whole idea of civilization is precisely that. It is collaboration for the greater good. That is what civilization is at heart. And understanding that when we do things for the longer term and not just for my immediate short term, I don't have to get the direct benefit. I'm going to benefit via this moreness that gets introduced into the world or the universe at large. And that is best use of energy. So when you bring it down to your best use of energy in the greater, most overall perspective that you possibly can, now you start to figure out how you as an individual can make a difference in the bigger picture that benefits not only you, but everybody else as well. It's very cool.
Thank you, Sil. Yeah, really cool. The best use of energy. I think it's really crucial because I know how I am when my energy gets down. Sander.
You're not going to do question 4 first?
Oh, if you want me to do it, yeah, of course. So first of all, I really like all the information has been great. I didn't know you were already getting ahead of me, so that's why I put you in before the question, but these things happen sometimes. So, based on everything we shared, how can we become more mindful and responsible stewards of our ecosystem and reduce our impact on the environment for the benefit of all living beings? So what are some practical things we can actually do to, understand ourselves, balance our energy, be part of that, tithe, share? What are the things we can do? So Sandra, do you want to start?
Pay attention to the right, or the things that matter and are right. We were talking about energy earlier, and where attention goes, energy flows. So if you keep focusing on the things that really are not good for you or your environment or the community, you are poisoning your environment, and the relationship you have with it. So
brilliant.
Where do you pay attention to?
So what's your
You pay
focus?
it,
What's your
and
attention?
what's your focus? Yeah, focus is paying attention to something. So yeah,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think we can all look at something that's going on around us and then look at the solution rather than keep focusing on the problem. Yeah, absolutely. Paul?
Treating everything in life as if it's sacred, making everything sacred, like enhances the energy. Like, I'm not going to say you can go out and buy a McDonald's Happy Meal and turn it into some kind of sanctified, holy meal. However, how we treat our food is really, really important. Like, and I'm not going to enter into the vegan versus meat eater debate. However, like how you treat everything on your plate, for example, and your plate could be an analogy for everything that's in your life. If you treat it as sacred, if you pray for it, if you send it healing to ease its suffering, if you do something in order to enhance it, to make it more meaningful, more sanctified, whatever word you want to use for that, you make it sacred so that you're ingesting that really good energy, and do the same for the rest of life. Like someone mentioned earlier about their home, like how you treat your home is a spirit. Like, so from a shamanic pagan perspective, everything is alive with a spirit, right? So even your home is a spirit. So how you treat your home, treat it like it's sacred. Don't just clean it, like fill it with love. And then when you do that, like in your own little ecosphere, so to speak, do that for the rest of creation. Like even as simple as something as simple as smiling to someone as you walk past. Like it can be really uncomfortable, but actual fact, you never know what that person's going through. It has a big impact. So the more we treat the things in our lives and the people in our lives like they're sacred, the more we extend that out even further. And before you know it, making the decision to do something harming for the environment or for someone else becomes less of the thing that you think about, because you just see everything as sacred. Everything in life is great, so you want to just treat it in the best respect, in the best way possible. That's how I would do it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Anna?
What came to me is how can we become more mindful and responsible stewards of our ecosystem? Well, first we have to shift our perspective from a mindset of lack to a mindset of abundance. If we really think about our world is very abundant. There's enough for everybody and everything. In fact, there's been studies done that show that the amount of food that is produced in some of the developed world countries like the United States and other parts of the world that are very affluent, there's enough produced in those places to feed the entire world. So it's not like there isn't enough resources. We're just not using those resources appropriately because we're acting from a mindset of not enough, of lack. So if you start from that, shift your perspective from lack to abundance, and then remember that everything in nature is about collaboration. There's a beautiful Native American way of cultivating that illustrates that collaboration is the way to do it. There's a thing called the Three Sisters in Native American agriculture. They had already agriculture was not as developed as it became in the old world, in Mesopotamia, for instance, but they had a concept of agriculture which was much more aligned with natural processes. So they would plant corn, beans, and squash or pumpkins together because they help each other grow. The corn stalk acts as support for the beans to climb on, so they're not eaten by pests on the ground. The squash with its big leaves shades the roots of the other two so that it keeps the moisture in the soil. And the beans, they have a really beautiful property, which is to fixate nitrogen into the earth, which is essential to the growth of any plant. So if we act in this way, if we think of ourselves as collaborators, then we don't take more than we need, and we help. So it's about conserving or not overusing, and also sharing. It's really that simple. There's so much in this world for us to enjoy and to share. It's not very difficult. So do we really need? I look around my own place and I realized I have way too many things. I don't need these things. What do I need to live? I need water. I need some food. I need shelter. I need some clothes. I need a place to go pee and poo. It's not very difficult. It's not very complicated. We make it complicated when we think we need more and more, and there's not enough, and I must take my own right now. Now, having said that, it is important to always start with yourself. If you can take care of your ecosystem, if you can take care of yourself, if your cup is full with what you need, then you can share from that cup. If your cup is not full, if you're always thinking it's half empty, you don't have enough. It's a lack mentality. It's not an abundance mentality. So be selfish first. Help yourself first. Take care of yourself first, because then you can take care of everything else. And don't overuse.
Yeah, and I think that's crucial, is that the more things you think you need in that cup, the harder it is for you to be able to fill it. So yeah, really strip it back and work out what you need, not what you want, I think is a really big part to that. So Brenda.
Yeah, so how do we become more mindful and responsible stewards of the ecosystem? I think what we do is we clean up our own space, and we treat plants, animals, minerals, everything as a precious gift, because that is what it is in this beautiful planet. And just think of a desert or Mars. Maybe Mars did look like our planet at one time. So keeping this planet beautiful and flourishing is what we need to do. And if we are grateful for everyone and everything, then you'll want to protect it and keep it safe. And one of the ways I thought of before of how we can successfully co-create in nature, you think of a beehive or an anthill, how these animals, they're structured for the greater good. There's no one of them that's more important than the other. They know what they're supposed to do. And for us, some ways that we've done this, I guess, is say the development of a building. You have the engineers, the electricians, the plumbers, they all come together and they all have to do things in a certain order, in a certain way. And people have had those GoFundMe pages to collectively get together as a group and help support somebody. And something that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago is a song, "We Are the World." And there was another song where all these people got together and sang part of a song, and it was around in different countries and different people, and they put it all together. And it was just so beautiful to see that kind of collaboration and people helping. And the way I learned to be more responsible, the shamanic energy healings that I've done over this several years, I learned to connect through different ceremonies to Mother Earth and to Grandmother Moon, and to meet my authentic self, my soul, that I've been for, thousands upon thousands of years. I have some sort of connection out there in the universe that is me. I met my spiritual parents, my ancestors, a gatekeeper, spirit guides, animal totems. Once I met all of these, I had much more respect for everything in life and how everything was connected and how everything loves me. So if you had parents that weren't that great, you meet your spiritual parents and Mother Earth wanting to love you. And I think it just all comes together when you're awakened and in tune with nature and with everything. You throw a piece of garbage on the ground and it bothers you. You go pick it up. You wouldn't mess up your place, and you'll give, like somebody was saying, give 5 or 10 or 15% once you've taken care of yourself. You give to other people and you be of service to help other people find their way, so that people aren't hurt, so that they're all growing and becoming. And once we all have the same desire to want to make a beautiful place, we will be able to create it. We'll co-create it because we'll want to, because it'll be joyful to us. It won't be a chore. It'll be joyful. We can do this. Thank you.
Yes, I believe so too. We can do this. Thank you, Brenda. Sil.
What can I do? That's the question, yes? Well, me, little old me. But what can I do? I hear this all the time. But, you're talking about all this great to good, all this fun. So, yeah, but what can I do? My actions, I'm just little old me. They don't make much of a difference. I say, you might think so. You remember when you went to the doctor's office and you saw that big chart on the wall with the STD chart, right? And it says 1 and then 2 and then 2 became 4, 8, 16 and so on. And he had this whole big downline of how everybody was affected by passing on the STDs. But now in some offices, you'll see that chart and it got one person in the middle of that whole mass of people over there, right? And everybody's got that black X on them, all negative. And this one person doesn't have it. Oh, there's you. See, you didn't pass it on. What happens to their downline? Their downline is all nice and bright and shiny. It doesn't have that X on it. Oh, so all I had to do was not to be negative, and I caused a whole massive positivity. So I personally don't feel that we have an obligation in the universal sense to be positive, but I do feel we have an obligation to not be negative. And this is how you can make a massive difference in the world, and don't be passing on those viruses of negativity. It's the most powerful virus there ever is. Yes, you don't have to pass on positive viruses, but you can if you want to. You can share positivity and give people the choice to use it, utilize them and connect to them. But when it comes to negativity, most of the time don't have much of a choice, right? If I go with my cold into the supermarket and I give everybody a cold, they didn't ask for it, right? So when we understand this and say, what can I do? Well, don't be negative. You might think that your negativity is only affecting you, and no, it has a massive effect in that downline. It is exponentially consequential, yes? So when we understand this exponential consequence, that's how we know we can make a massive difference in the world, yeah? just by our little actions of not being negative. And of course, if you're sharing positivity, same thing. A seed that can grow and expand and make the difference in the whole world. Yeah. Very important.
Very important. Brilliant point. Thank you, Sil. Jennifer?
So I think that to become more mindful and responsible stewards of our ecosystem and reduce the impact on the environment for the benefit of all living beings, 2 words come to mind for me: observation and organization. Like Anna said, we have everything that we need here, right? Like in one country, you can produce enough food to feed the whole entire world. So we need to observe what we have and reorganize how we use it, right? And where it goes and stuff like that. And as individuals, we could all, you know, think of what means the most to us. What do we feel super passionate about? Like I think his name is Michael Reynolds. He invented something called Earthship. Have any of you ever heard of that? This guy builds houses out of garbage that would have just polluted the environment. But these houses are amazing because they, you know, they hold a temperature, they grow their own food in there, it produces its own water, it does everything. So there are ways that we can. I watched a video the other day on YouTube of this musician who made he made a bass guitar out of sea plastic, like plastic, recycled plastic that was fished out of the ocean. And there was this whole factory where they grind it down into pellets, and artistic people come take those pellets and melt it into something else that's useful. So I think it's all about organizing, first of all, observing what we have here, and then reorganizing it in a way that we can be using what we have more efficiently.
Love it. Still there? Right, so just having a technical issue there. Yeah, brilliant point. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Anna.
Yeah. So to be useful, to not do harm. Somebody coined this really amazing phrase: do no harm, take no shit. To do no harm means that you understand that everything you do has an effect on everything else. It is also important to realize that you alone cannot save the world, but your small contribution does. So for instance, if you go for a walk in the open space, in nature, at the beach, and you see a piece of garbage, pick it up. That's taking responsibility. It's not your piece of garbage. You weren't the one who threw it there, but it is your world. It is your forest. It is your beach. And you're there at that moment. Pick it up. Don't make a big deal out of it. Just do it. Don't think that you have to pick up all of the garbage of the world. It's impossible. It's only, you can't do it. But you can pick that piece of garbage. And in that action itself has reverberations. Not only are you taking a piece of garbage out of the environment that a bird or an animal is not going to eat and die from, you are also being an example for anybody who's around you that watches it. And you plant that seed in that person's mind. Oh, maybe I should do that too. It's not difficult to just bend down and pick up the piece of garbage. We also have incredible, powerful minds. If we can create bombs that destroy the entire world, we can create something else that does the opposite. It's really up to us. We are incredibly powerful. And the most powerful part of ourselves is our intention. What is our intention for the world we live in? So anything we do, if we imbue it with a positive intention, that act in itself saves the world. It's not difficult. Forgive yourself for not saving the world, and celebrate yourself for picking up the piece of garbage. That's what you're doing in that moment. That's enough in that moment. Tomorrow you'll do something else. You'll do something more. You might pass someone on the street that looks a little down, and you smile at them. And in doing that, you give them the message, I see you, you are important, you exist. So taking care of our ecosystem is not just not making garbage. It's not just not overusing resources. It's also, like Sil said, having a positive mindset and having a loving heart where you take care of each other. Take care of yourself first, then take care of others. Everything you do has reverberations. So be mindful of what you do and what you think and what you say and what you feel.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Decompression logic.
decompression logic, yeah. And on that
Yes,
decompression
take
logic
care of
note,
yourself first. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I think
Important.
we're going to call it a day. So thank you for everyone that stayed with us throughout the show, and thank you for everybody watching the replay as well. I hope you found it as great as we have. So today we've been talking about the greater good, and I think personally the main thing I took away from today is that there is no separation between individualism and collective consciousness. We each, as an individual, make up that collective consciousness. And only by connecting with ourselves and really knowing ourselves and looking more into ourselves can we see how we can be a better part of that collective consciousness. And being positive is such an important thing. Don't look at the points that bug you and just talk about them. Start doing something about them. Start saying, how would I like the world to be? How could that be better? And then talk to somebody about that. And then together you can start to co-create. Yeah. And you can collaborate and go, yeah, that's a good idea. And then you talk to somebody else and you talk to somebody else. That's kind of how we form the Conscious Creators community. And it's working for us. And I hope it's working for you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to everyone on the show. We will be back next Thursday talking about our wins as conscious creators and how it feels and what it means to be a conscious creator. And so we hope that you can make it there. Please remember to, or take the time to put your suggestions down for the next season, which will be coming only in a couple of weeks. So we really want to produce shows that you want to watch, that you want to engage in, that are going to benefit you and answer your questions. Thanks again, everybody. See you soon.